latest reports is that there is turmoil in that dressing room.
Oh, not again.
Not the happiest of places. Well, the reports...
How can they be so unhappy when they've just made that great win against Real Betis?
OK. But yeah, they were the first team to win there all season.
Torres hat-trick. Lewandowski, off you come.
Well,
João Felix off the bench, great goal.
OK, so...
The two 16-year-olds play. How? Lamine Yamal's down the wing, why are we so unhappy?
It's not a place of harmony. Apparently, players openly challenging Xavi in that dressing room. The reports are saying that after that game against Unionistas, Lewandowski challenged the coach. He was overheard speaking loudly, this is according to the report, about the team that was put out. Overheard, so that, you know, he didn't mind who heard him doing that.
Do you know what Robert Lewandowski needs to do? I'll tell you. Play better. That might help. If he plays better, because he's the big guy, right? He's the talisman. You might argue it's Gundogan and Frankie de Jong and whoever, right? Pedri is a youngster. But this guy's the talisman. They brought him in to continue doing what he was doing for Bayern Munich, right? And we can talk about age and whatever, right? But he's not doing that. He's not doing that, and he's been, I was going to say vocal, but actually whiny from the start of the season. Ever since he was roughed up in the game was it the Getafe game? I think it was Getafe away. And I get it, that was over-the-top stuff, but ever since that day, he's moaned and he's groaned about the league, about the referees, about the standard, about the lack of service to him, about his teammates. It seems, on the face of it, he's whining about the manager. Is Robert Lewandowski actually whining about the one thing that he can make a change, and that's Robert Lewandowski himself?
But he isn't the only one, right? Because Gundogan did say after the Clasico, remember, that he didn't expect a dressing room like that he didn't felt the dressing room was hurting.
But that's not Xavi's fault. If he's got a bunch of guys who are younger players in the dressing room, and look, Xavi the buck will stop with the manager. But it's not really the manager's fault, but it is his job to deal with it if they go in the dressing room after dominating a Clasico, but unravelling in the final 20 minutes, as it did, and they did, and they lost, and players come in and are not angry or upset about it or frustrated. It's only Xavi's job to have a go at that, if he feels right, or leave it to the senior players. That's not his fault if a player comes in and goes, and I'm not suggesting this happened, but they come in and go, well, we lost the game, but we played really well today, and that's generally not how players would react after a huge game like that.
Here's my question around that. What is Gundogan doing in terms of changing the culture? He was brought in for a reason, and I feel more than just his playing ability. Now, the more these stories come out, the more I feel there's a lack of accountability from some of Barcelona's biggest names. And that's an issue. And while Barcelona continue to do this incredible job of bringing through young players, you have to rely on the more senior, more experienced players to kind of shape the culture in that dressing room. These are kids who are not used to playing in this kind of environment, with this kind of pressure, how to handle losses or wins. So my question is, what is Gundogan doing in terms of, here we have a player who's just come off the most successful season a club could just about ask for with Manchester City. He comes into Barcelona. What is he doing in terms of changing that culture? Where's his accountability? We know Robert Lewandowski, he's devoid of any kind of accountability. We saw that way back in his Bayern days, when he wasn't winning the top scorer in the league title. He was blaming everybody else for the lack of service. Earlier on this season, did exactly the same, blaming the lack of service. Now, there's a total lack of, as I say, accountability from Lewandowski. If he has a look at the chances that he's spurned, I'm not sure how you come in and just throw criticism everywhere else. So now all of a sudden it's gone from not that Lewandowski isn't playing well, but that Xavi isn't picking the right team, that Xavi isn't doing what he's supposed to do. And I just don't feel that these senior players in particular aren't pulling their respective weights within that dressing room. It has to be a combined effort.
As you said, Shaq, he's got a history, sorry Frank, Lewandowski have thrown his toys out the pram. And as Shaq mentioned, he did it in Germany when he felt he was not going to win this award, and he wasn't getting enough goals, and he was blaming teammates for not doing this and not doing that. But guess what? He kind of was able to get away with it in Germany because Bayern was so dominant. And as we sit here now, they still are until Leverkusen or somebody else dethrones them. But in Spain, it's not like that, as you know. There is, you know, if it's not Real Madrid, it's Atletico Madrid or somebody. There's always a real rivalry there that's putting pressure on one of the big two. If it's not one of the big two themselves fighting with each other, there's somebody else sniping around. And so the pressure, the bottom line, there's a way more pressure, no matter what anybody says, in Spain than there is in Germany. Way more pressure.
But to that point, you could do that in Real Madrid. Lewandowski could have this kind of attitude at Real Madrid where you have 10 other fully established international footballers. But when you have a dressing room like Barcelona's, when you have a starting 11 with two 16-year-olds, and then here comes a player who some argue should have won the Ballon d'Or a couple of seasons ago, coming in and throwing his toys out every time things don't go well, what does that say to them? Well, how does that shape that dressing room going forward? It's a totally different Arsenal Lewandowski, and in my opinion, he's failing the bigger picture for as to what's needed in the Barcelona dressing room.
So none of this is on Xavi, Frank?
Well, I have a hard time, like the guys, to find Xavi guilty of everything. Yes, he has his part of responsibility because he's the coach. And maybe, smashing the table in the dressing room and say, you know what, why don't you shut up and listen to me? I'm going to tell you what to do. That's the problem of I think I see the old picture again where it's a kind of a reflection of our society where as soon as something doesn't work, you blame the other nowadays. We play a collecting sport, and what I see is only selfishness, and you only think about what can be good for you because it doesn't work for everyone. And normally, I would say that in my time, the experienced players were trying to guide the youngest and to find terms, in the dressing room, how to work together. Now, the experienced players, the senior players, as soon as it doesn't work, they blame the coach, but they go public on top of it instead of dealing in the dressing room. I don't understand those generation. I was expecting much more from Lewandowski, even De Jong, and Gundogan, of course. But it's very sad to see that because it makes me think of our society where nowadays we don't try to help each other. We try to blame each other and we don't take any responsibility for our acts. And that's coming from a collective sport, coming from an education for sharing stuff, it's very hard to see.
I think if there is, and these are kind of reports and stuff, and usually there's no smoke without fire. If Xavi wants to get this, if there is a dressing room problem or what, if he wants to get that respect back, it's a bit like the little kid in the playground who's getting picked on by the big guy. If you want to get the respect of others, you've got to take the big guy down. And I think he's at a stage where I think he might have to make a statement by leaving Lewandowski out. Barca might actually be a better, more efficient, quicker, more dynamic side without Robert Lewandowski in it. And it might also send a statement to the dressing room to say, go against me. If you're not doing it on the field, you're not playing.
Well, let's see.